Welcome to the SPEAKPact podcast, where high-performing speakers and the producers who hire them merge to give you the insider secrets to the lucrative speaking industry. Antoniette Rose, your podcast host and celebrated speaker agent, unveils insider success strategies. Discover a nexus of thought leaders and bookers, maximizing your potential in each and every episode. Your ticket to ultimate speaking success begins right here. Catch the transformative insights waiting for you on the SPEAKPact podcast, hosted by the industry powerhouse herself, Antoniette Rose.
Welcome back to SPEAKPact. We are thrilled you're here with us today. We're going to have a lot of fun today. I actually have the Doctor of Happiness in the room. He is on the WABC Radio quite often, and that is what he's become known as. But he has been in the talent industry for many years. Many of you might know who he is. I have Jeffre Gurian in the room. Welcome to SPEAKPact.
Thank you so much, Antoniette. It's great to be on with you. Been looking forward to this.
Thank you for agreeing. It's really a treat to be able to dive into your journey. It has been electric, eccentric, all of the above. And your story is pretty remarkable, going from a stutterer, right? A debilitating impediment, I guess is what you would call it, and overcoming the unovercomable and doing what most stutterers don't think that they can do. And that's really being a public voice. Tell me a little bit about that. What gave you that courage to kind of defy the norm?
Yeah, thank you for bringing that up. I love talking about it because I started stuttering when I was about 6 or 7 years old. And I stuttered through my 20s and beyond. Even after I was a doctor, I was still blocking on certain words. And when I went to college, I made myself, for some reason, I was always confronting fear. I grew up in a very loving and supportive family, but I grew up with a lot of fears. And for some reason, I hated being afraid, and I always confronted my fears. When I was afraid of the dark as a child, I made myself go in the dark to show myself that there was nothing to be afraid of. So when I went to college, I was only 16 when I went to college. I was much younger than everybody else. And I made myself run for the president of the freshman class. It was a very big school. I only knew kids from my high school. There were 7 high schools that fed into this college. And I couldn't say my name. I could never say Gurian. Most stutterers have a very hard time saying their own name.
Wow.
And I told myself if I could win the election, I wouldn't have to stutter anymore because it would show me that people liked me. For some reason, I guess I felt like I didn't fit in. I was much younger than everybody. And even though in high school, people acted as if I was popular, I didn't really feel it, which is very important. So anyway, I got kids to act as my campaign managers who would introduce me to kids I didn't know and say, hey, this is Jeffre Gurian and he's running for president. You should vote for this kid. Anyway, I won the election. I was the president of the entire freshman class of Hunter College. And
did you stop stuttering?
No, I still stuttered. And it was a great lesson, Antoniette. It was one of my first great lessons because it taught me that outside validation in life doesn't work. It doesn't matter how many people compliment you and tell you you're wonderful and talented and fabulous. It matters what you think of yourself. And that started my journey on learning how to undo the thoughts in my mind that were not valid. I started realizing that I didn't stutter when I was alone. I only stuttered when I was trying to talk to somebody else. And I consider it grace, Antoniette, that I was given the knowledge to realize you can't have a disability based on your location. If a man has a true disability, if a man has a limp, he limps in every room of his house. He can't go into a room and close the door and walk perfectly. But if I could speak better when I'm alone, then theoretically it means there's nothing wrong with me. That started my journey on thought, on basically taking my mind apart and realizing that I was holding thoughts that were not valid for me. I was holding negative thoughts about myself, and I gave myself a false disability. And it took me several years of very hard work to work on myself, to allow myself to let go of the bondage of stuttering. And now, as an avocation, as you can see, not only don't I stutter, you can't even shut me up. I talk about I have a lot to say, but as an avocation, I work with stutterers all over the world, and I teach them how to control your mind. Because if I started stuttering at 6 or 7, then I had a 6 or 7-year-old mind, right? So when I'm 30, why would I live with a decision I made when I was 6 or 7? If you had something important to decide, would you ever call a little girl 6 or 7 years old and ask her what to do? Of course not. It would be ridiculous. But basically, that's what I was doing. I was living as an adult with a decision I made when I was 6 or 7.
Wow. Okay, so many profound things that you were sharing, Jeffre. And first of all, I want to make it clear, you are a doctor, you're a dentist, and you have decided to devote your, it's interesting, just the symbolism of the mouth, right? Of what's happening in the mouth, that you were, that you kind of honed in on that. So you're a high achiever, and a lot of people who deal with issues of fear, of discomfort. I love that you would face your fears and make yourself uncomfortable, but that you decided to put your all of those talents into helping other people understand that mindset that you had figured out along the way, that you didn't get stuck at that 6-year-old person who, for whatever reason, pent something up that started creating that stutter. When was that stepping over point where you knew, okay, that's gone. I can speak?
It was very gradual, and I created all kinds of exercises. But in terms of my background, I just wanted to clarify something.
Yeah.
I am a DDS, but I spent 20 years on the board of the Association for Spirituality and Psychotherapy.
Oh.
And in 1999, I presented my work to Dr. Henry Grayson. And when I say my work, I spent 12 years at NYU as a clinical professor in oral medicine and orofacial pain. And my specialty was taking away migraine headaches and physical pain caused by bruxism. When people are stressed out, they clench and grind their teeth.
Me.
And it causes neck pain and headaches and many physical symptoms that go undiagnosed. It can cause tinnitus, ringing in the ears. If you wake up in the morning and your neck hurts, the last person in the world you would ever tell would be your dentist, right? Why would you ever tell your dentist that your neck hurts? It wouldn't occur to you to do that. People make up an excuse that makes sense to them. So if you wake up in the morning and your neck hurts, people say, oh, my pillow's no good, my mattress is no good, I slept in a funny position, I spent too much time at the gym, because you can't know what you don't know. You can't wake up in the morning with your neck hurting and say, you know what, my splenius capitis muscles are sore. It must be my TMJ, because you don't have that knowledge. So I spent 12 years at NYU, and I was asked to lecture to the entire faculty on using energy, just the energy from my hands, to take away physical pain. Now, if you walk into a university and tell them you take away pain with your hands, they'll probably call the police. But they saw me doing it for 12 years. So they had me lecture to the entire faculty and then the head of the TMJ department. And TMJ stands for temporomandibular joint. It's the joint that allows you to open and close your mouth. And that's the joint. It's considered a master joint. It not only controls how your head feels, it controls how your whole body feels. So in 1999, I approached Dr. Henry Grayson, who's the founder of the National Institute of the Psychotherapies.
Yep.
And I said to him, I don't have your training, but if you're working with people who are emotionally ill, they're having symptoms that you're not diagnosing, that you're not treating. And he made me part of the board. They accepted my work. And I wound up lecturing to psychologists on their field at energy psychology conferences. So I just wanted to...
Now, I'm glad you filled in those blanks, Jeffre.
I'm not just a dentist, because that wouldn't have bearing. But
right.
in speaking, I speak about happiness and mindset, which is very, very important. The power of your mind is incredible.
Well, I love that that you brought that element in, and that you have the medical background, because it is kind of a holistic thing, right? When we are mentally stunted, right? When we're mentally stuck for whatever reason, that affects our voice. Actually, my son, I just got off the phone with him. He did a 10-day Vipassana where they don't talk for 10 days. And this was the first time, just before I got on with you, was the first time I got to actually speak with him. And I said, Dev, you sound different. He said, yeah, that was my throat was so tight.
Throat chakra was closed. Yeah.
It was so closed. I didn't know any of that, right? I just knew that he sounded different. So it's all interconnected. If we feel like there's no way I want to get on that stage, or I can only go so far with stages and speaking. A lot of that has to do with, yes, our minds, our thoughts, but it also presents itself in physical ways. And you have the balance of understanding both of those sides. So I love that we're diving into this.
Right. Well, I describe what I do as a body, mind, spirit approach to wellness. And so on July 18th, I was the keynote speaker at the Minneapolis Convention Center for the Academy of General Dentistry 2024 convention to about 500 people. And the topic they gave me was how to survive a career in dentistry using positive thinking and humor. Because I'm the only doctor that I know of who has a long-standing career in the comedy world, working with some of the biggest stars. I wrote for Rodney Dangerfield and Joan Rivers,
wow,
and Andrew Dice Clay and Gilbert Gottfried and Richard Belz. Just a very long list of comedians, up to the comedians of today like Nick Kroll and John Mulaney. I opened their Broadway show for them, and they had me on Comedy Central. So I have a different perspective, and I use humor not to just tell jokes, but it's an attitude of humor. So that's how they brought me there to be their keynote speaker, because everything is a balance in life, left brain and right brain. Left brain, I'm a doctor, but right brain, I'm a creative person. And humor is a great way to carry a message.
And to connect, right?
Yes.
And to connect. Well, let's go in succession, like step by step. First, you had to get comfortable with that discomfort of speaking and not knowing if you were going to stutter, or I'm sure there was all kinds of reasons. So can you speak to that? Like, how did you, that for many people, speaking in front of even 10 other people is paramount to death, right? They would rather go meet their maker than have to get in front of people. Let's talk about embracing that discomfort.
It's people's greatest fear. I used to, one of the books I wrote is called Fight the Fear, Overcoming Obstacles That Stand in Your Way. And fear is a bully. And it tells you that you can't accomplish your goals, that you'll never achieve the things that you want to. It's the little part of your subconscious mind that acts as your enemy. It's the voice that tells you you're not enough. You're not smart enough. You're not young enough. You're not this or that. And it's a lie. It's a complete falsehood. And so I had to encourage myself. I wrote this book about fear because so many things made me nervous and made me afraid. The fear of getting on stage and actually performing. Do you know how hard it is to do stand-up comedy?
That's an area that still scares the bleepy out of me.
Yeah, to get up on a stage and try to convince perfect strangers that what you think is funny is actually funny is one of the hardest things to do. If you're a singer, whether you're good or not, they'll applaud politely. But if you're a comedian, nobody laughs to be polite.
Silence.
Yeah, right. And right away whether you're funny or not. Just this morning I got booked for a gig this weekend, 3 days from now. They want me to do 45 minutes at a speakeasy in Manhattan. And, I get asked to do the most unusual things. And that little voice, that subconscious voice, you have to learn to make it so quiet that it's a whisper. That's what I teach people I work with who stutter. If you were in a crowd and someone was whispering to you, there's a good chance you wouldn't hear what they were saying. That's what you have to do to your subconscious mind, because your fear will always tell you you're not going to do well, you're not right for this. There's always some anxiety before you do a performance, before you're going to speak to a crowd. Every creative person has that anxiety, but you can never let it stop you.
Hearing that you've got to quiet your subconscious voice and actually doing it. Like I've paid out quite a quite a good bit of money for these mindset doctors and those kinds, just to kind of go the next, new level, new devil, right? New level, whole new set of fears. You thought you overcame them all, but then you get to the new level and there's a whole new set to face
they'll all come back, right?
How, hearing that it can be done and actually being able to put it in practice are two very different things. Is there one go-to that when you hear that subconscious voice kind of creeping up in there, that is your kind of quick action thing that you can do? Or is it whole? Okay. Yeah,
and I'll share that with you. I tell myself that if other people can do it, I must be able to do it. And I'm not talking about skydiving or mountain climbing or something that's dangerous. I have a fear of traveling. So in 2019, I made myself go to Japan all by myself because it was the scariest thing I could think of to do. My ADHD kicks my butt on a constant basis. I have a little bit of OCD in there, I'm sure, and I have fears of getting lost. Japan openly states that they have the most complicated subway system. I took the subway every day. I was lost every single day in Japan, and I confronted every fear that I had, the 14-hour flight. But when I went to the airport, Antoniette, the airport is filled with millions of people who are traveling. And I say to myself, if they can do it, I have to be able to do it. Not that I can do it also. I must be able to do it. If other people can do things comfortably, then I have to do it as well. There's a million comedians out there. If they can get up on stage, I can do it. There's a million keynote speakers. If they can do it, I have to be able to do it. It's reverse egotism to tell yourself, to doubt yourself, to tell yourself that you can't do it. If you want it to be one thing, like the president or the Pope, where there's only one person that can do it, I can understand you doubting yourself. But if you want to be a doctor or a performer or a speaker, a keynote speaker, and there's many other people who do that, what right do you have to tell yourself that you cannot do that? It's reverse egotism.
Powerful. And another thing in the reverse, I love this, Jeffre. Okay, another thing in the reverse is if that's how you can overcome your boundaries, then that's also in a similar way, the way you help your audience overcome their boundaries, right? You share your story. It's like, oh my gosh, he was a stutterer. He's accomplished all of these things. He has ADHD, OCD. He's got, these pretty big fears. If he could do it, and as you're sharing your stories, right, then certainly I can do it. And that's why stories are so powerful to connect with your audience. So you're on fire. Keep going.
Well, I do a lot of work with 12-step people, and I'll tell you, that's the power of the 12-step programs, is sharing personal stories about yourself. You share them with people, you don't know their last name, you don't know what they do for a living, but people identify when you have the courage to share personal stories about yourself and how you've overcome certain things. People identify with that. We all have different names and we have different backgrounds and all, but we share similar traits in common. We all have the same 46 chromosomes. I didn't do magic to cure myself of stuttering. I just worked very hard on myself. If you do what I did, if I'm willing to share with you what I did, it's called modeling. If you model yourself after someone who has accomplished something that you want to accomplish, theoretically, you can achieve the same thing. The problem is that you don't know how hard anybody else works. When I work with someone who stutters and our session ends, I don't know what they're going to do for the rest of the week. I know that I was obsessed with curing myself. I vowed to myself I was not going to go through my life as a stutterer because I knew I wanted to be a doctor and I knew I wanted to be an entertainer and a speaker of some kind. And I said, how can I do that if I'm stuttering? So I was literally obsessed. My whole focus was on curing myself. Now, I don't know how hard another person works. If you tell me you worked hard, okay, I accept that, but I don't know how many hours you put into it. I created affirmations for myself, and I created exercises for myself, and I challenged myself to go into places and speak where I was so nervous to do it, to show myself that I could do it. I signed up for a speech class in college, not speech therapy, but to give speeches. And the amazing thing was that when I gave the speech, I never stuttered. I stuttered before and I stuttered after. but not while I was giving the speech. And other kids said to me, how'd you do that? And again, I think it was the way you give an actor a script and they become the part in the script that they're playing. Mm-hmm. I think that's what I did. I played the part of Jeffre Gurian, who didn't stutter. And I got this false confidence that allowed me to speak fluently. But what it did was it impressed in my mind that the truth is that there's nothing wrong with me. I had to believe it. I'm a very big, I work a lot with chakras and energy and something called cellular memory. Are you familiar with that term?
I am. So but talk about it, because there's a lot of people out there who may not have gone down this road. Yep.
It's fascinating to me because all it means is that every single thing you've experienced since you're born in your senses is still inside of you. It's the reason that you can hear a song you like and you'll remember the boy or girl you liked in the 3rd grade, and it comes back immediately. Or you smell a perfume and you're like, my kindergarten teacher wore that perfume. And there's no thought involved. It's like a sensory deja vu. It happens automatically. And that's cellular memory. So with stutterers, they have cellular memory from the time they're children, that every time they try to speak, they have a problem speaking. And my work involves outweighing those cellular memories, creating new cellular memories that are more numerous than the old cellular memories, so that your mind remembers the new cellular memory instead of going back in time to the old cellular memory. Because when they're stuttering as a child, not as an adult. And again, I use that as an example. It's a bigger story about what you can do with the power of your mind. In my personal story, I used it to overcome many obstacles, stuttering the most. But
well, I'm with you. Emotions can get stuck. You can have a bad, quote unquote, bad knee, and it could actually be stemmed from some sort of emotion that you're just holding on to and you haven't let go of. And this is science. That's why they'll talk about how people with stress can have major lung issues. People with anger can have major liver issues, right? Those emotions get stuck in there. So can we talk a little bit? You do a lot of work with heart wounds. Is this interconnected to what you're talking about right now? Or is that?
Yes, absolutely. There's a very strong connection. I just want to say that we have brain cells throughout our body, not just in our brain.
So I knew about the gut brain, but I didn't.
Well, it's the reason because of stress that some people will get a stomach ache and some people will get a backache. You internalize it. And so heart wounds are very important to me. I created that term because from the time we're children, every time someone hurts your feelings or breaks a promise to you, breaks up with you in a relationship or hurts you in some way, it stays lodged inside of us in our heart chakra. And I call them heart wounds. And they affect your self-esteem and they affect your self-confidence and they affect every decision that you make in your life. Because every time you're called upon to make a decision, you think about what to do, right? You use your thoughts. Who else's thoughts can you use but your own? So you think about what to do. And if your thoughts are faulty, if you're holding negative thoughts that are not valid for you, then your decisions are not going to work out properly or the way you'd like them to, which is the reason that people see these patterns in their life, the same bad job over and over again, the same bad relationship over and over again. And the only common denominator is you. Everyone else is changing. You're the one who keeps showing up. So it has to be something that you're doing. And so heart wounds are very important to release. And my first happiness book, which was the first bestseller on Amazon, is the one Healing Your Heart by Changing Your Mind.
Nice.
A spiritual and humorous approach to achieving happiness. And have you any idea how hard it is to get a dog to sit in lotus position? It's almost impossible.
I mean, that wasn't AI?
Yeah, probably. It's not my dog. But healing your heart by changing your mind is not about heart disease. It's about healing the wounds that we all carry. Because I talk a lot about sensitivity. We're all more sensitive than we want to admit. Especially women. Women are gifted with a sensitivity that often feels like a burden. Our society very often tells women you're too sensitive, which is a terrible message because sensitivity is a great strength. So I'm an empath and I had to learn to own my sensitivity because it felt like a terrible burden my whole life. there was a time if I was with you and you were sad, I was sadder for you than you were. I overfelt my feelings, which made me withdraw. It made me look like I didn't care, when the truth was that I cared too much. I'm like an antenna for feelings, and it took me many years to learn how to use it. So when I was in practice, it made me a very good doctor, because one of my patients once said to me, I'll never forget, he said, I think you'd rather hurt yourself than hurt me, because I developed painless techniques. It was very important for me to work on people and have them not be afraid. Because if you go to the dentist and he gives you a painful injection, you're nervous for the whole visit. You're expecting more pain. But if you get an injection and you don't even know you got it, people used to say to me, are you going to give me an injection? I'm like, I already did. That makes people comfortable. Then they can relax, and then you can do your work. And those are a lot of the things that I lectured on in Minneapolis recently.
Well, I'd like to dive in a little bit deeper with that, because this is definitely a proven process for you, and an area that you have not just dabbled in, but you've dove into for many years. So the connection between, okay, we've made a decision that we want to accomplish a certain thing. We're willing to put in the elbow grease and face some discomforts and fears. And then we graduate to recognizing that there's heart wounds that are holding us back somewhere. And then there's that whole piece, because even the greatest job, even speaker life, which is fabulous, right? It's got its hard days. It's got its hard months. Sometimes it has its hard years. Is happiness an emotion or a condition? Is happiness a choice, or is it something else? Can you speak a little bit to that?
Yeah, happiness is the goal, but only a lunatic would be happy all the time. No one's happy all the time.
Yeah, you've had happy friends that you're just like, there's something off here. Overly happy friends.
It's a process.
Yeah.
It's a perspective. One of the quotes from my book is, you can't change your past. The only thing you could change is your perspective of your past. It's how you process the events that have happened to you in your life. And I talk about very personal things. I went through a divorce, which is always painful, but I'm friendly with my ex-wife and her husband, and we celebrate all holidays together. I have a very big extended family with my children and her children, and as I said, and her husband and his family. We all get together and we celebrate together because of the principles that I talk about, because she gave me the greatest gift that anyone could ever give someone. She gave me my daughters, which no one else could have given me. There had to be her DNA in order for them to be those people. Yeah. And I'm eternally grateful for that. And I always was. So we never said a bad thing about each other. When people split up, very often there's a lot of hatred and animosity. And if you never had children, you never have to see each other again. But it's interesting that you can't get divorced unless you were once married, right? You have to get married first in order to be able to get divorced. And so it just shows us that sometimes we make choices that are unusual, that are based on other things, that as time goes by, we wonder, what were we thinking when we made that choice? And I'm not only talking about marriage, I'm talking about a lot of things in life, that we make choices based on our thoughts. But a lot of times our thoughts are incorrect. They're not valid for us. And again, so that always fascinated me, and I bring it into everything that I do. I don't know if that answered your question.
It did, but it also makes a lot of sense because, we crazy Italian background, right? And a lot of dysfunction. And you see certain of us, cousins, siblings, aunts, uncles, who decided to take on the focus of the miserable parts, right? They're just so focused on the things that happen, the injustices, those kinds of things. And then there's others
they dwell on that, and it eats you up.
Yeah.
You may know that saying, resentment is like you taking poison, expecting the other person to die.
Yeah.
Some people live on resentment, and it's important to let certain things go. To let them go, not for the other person, for yourself, because when you think of the person that you resent, they give you a stomach ache and a headache, they make you feel sick, and they're not thinking about you at all. They're going about their life perfectly fine, and you're making yourself ill. So the only thing to do is to let them go, to give yourself the freedom to let it go.
Let's talk about that a bit. So let's talk about a speaker, right? I do not want low-paying engagements. I do not want low-paying engagements. That's what they're focused on. What are they going to get? They're going to get low-paying or no-paying engagements.
You draw into your life what you focus on.
Exactly. Versus, I will be on that stage one day. I'm going to be on that stage one day. I'm going to be, the setting and being willing to work your way there, right? Not say, I'm not going to do anything until I'm that stage. It's just the power of your mind is so profound, and you need to understand this. If number one, you're going to make it as a speaker, and number two, you're going to be able to understand how to help your audience get the transformations that you set out when you're on stage to help them get. So I'm really glad we're diving deep into this, and you are definitely the person to be talking with about this.
Thank you. I'm so glad that you get it. Look, I did so many things for free starting out to meet people in the business. People often say to me, how do you know all these people? I'm holding up stuff. I'm on the cover of Sutton Place magazine. They refer to me as comedy legend, and there's pictures of me in there with Kevin Hart and Jerry Seinfeld and D.L. Hughley and Tiffany Haddish, Amy Schumer, the biggest stars in comedy. And people say to me, how do you know all these people? I don't even have an answer for that, Antoniette. I don't know. Life has been kind of magical. I've been in places where I needed to be. I worked very, very hard. I did a lot of things for free for many years, because when you're going to write for big stars, they could hire anybody in the world they wanted. Why would they hire you? So I was always willing to prove myself.
Yes. Not so arrogant, right? That you weren't willing to pay the costs that it takes to get to the success that you have.
Humility is very important.
I know you talk a little bit about that humility piece and how that relates to success. Sure. And then I want to talk a little bit more about how people can get a hold of you.
Great. So humility was very interesting to me. I was very friendly with the famous comedian Jackie Mason. And he once said to me, when you go in to buy a shirt, the guy just gives you the shirt. He doesn't give you a shirt and a picture of himself and tell you who he is and who he knows. But in the entertainment business, anytime you're putting yourself out there, speaker, model, actor, singer, whatever, you're always telling people who you are and what you do. And you have to create a balance, because you can't come across as obnoxious. We've all met people who seem so arrogant, because they're so taken with themselves. You can't believe your own press. I have a lot of press, but I've been studying spirituality for about 30 years. And the essence of spirituality is to detach from ego. Ego stands for easing God out.
Ooh.
It can be a very dangerous thing. I know some of the biggest stars, and they're just crazy, because fame is a heavy drug, and it can really affect you if you don't put it in balance. So everything is about balance, and humility is very important. When I talk about spirituality, I always talk about the difference between spirituality and religion, because some people get them confused. Religion can be wonderful for people, but it tends to divide us, because it puts you into a category, and other people are automatically outside of that category. And spirituality brings the whole world together, because all it asks is that you believe in a force greater than yourself. And you could call it nature, the universe, God, whatever is comfortable for you, as long as you know that it isn't you. Because when you think that you're ruling everything in your life, then you tend to blame yourself when things don't go the way you would like them to. I don't even want to say when things go wrong. It's when things don't go the way you'd like them to. Because I once had a flat tire that saved my life. And I was cursing my luck for getting a flat tire when I was on my way to go away for a weekend with someone I really wanted to go away with. And it turned out that when they fixed my tire, the guy who was fixing it called me over. He was all shook up. And he said, you see this rod? He goes, I know you don't know about cars. This rod controlled your steering, and it was about to slip out, and you would have lost control of your car on the highway. He said, you're so lucky that you got a flat tire, because the flat tire saved your life.
Wow.
And
yeah, that just gave me truth bumps all over. I have a very famous singer.
It feels just telling the story.
Yes.
And when I was in Minneapolis, I still have that piece of metal that was in my tire. I kept it as a reminder.
To remind you, yeah.
That when I think something bad is happening, that sometimes it could turn out to be something good. I had a heart attack in 2015 that came out of nowhere. I had never been sick a day in my life. And I was joking. I was on the operating table and I wasn't fully asleep, and I felt what they were doing. They were unplugging my heart. And I said to the surgeon, I said, I feel you in my heart, not in a romantic way, but I feel you in my heart. And the whole surgical team started.
A comedian even on the show.
He came to my room later and he hugged me. He said, in all my years of surgery, no one's ever joked with me on the operating table. And I was back on stage 5 days later. And the owner of the comedy club said to me, what, are you crazy? You just had a heart attack. And I said, yeah, but it's hard to get a spot here. I didn't want to lose my spot. And only another comedian would understand that.
Right. But, oh my goodness, fabulous. Okay, at about this part of the show, you have dropped so many actionable gems that there is a good number of our audience that's going to want to know what the best ways to reach out to you and hitch their stars to you are. So yeah, let us know. Mm-hmm.
I'll tell you. So my website is comedymatterstv.com. It's not all about comedy. There's a lot on there about comedy, but under the About column, there's stuff about headaches and spirituality and healing and mindset. And for people, if you know anyone who stutters, I have a special website for that. It's called StopStutteringNowGurian.com. Gurian as in Nancy. StopStutteringNowGurian.com. On Instagram, I'm at Jeffre Gurian. TikTok is at Jeffre L. Gurian. And all my books are on Amazon. I'm going to show you them quickly. Healing Your Heart by Changing Your Mind, a spiritual and humorous approach to achieving happiness. The second one is called Fight the Fear, Overcoming Obstacles That Stand in Your Way. And when I was recovering from COVID double pneumonia in March of 2020, well, as you could tell, I'm a trendsetter. I went right out and got COVID. I don't want to wait. Went up in the hospital. I left now. A
lot of people followed after you.
I was very, very sick. Yeah, it was March of 2020 when they didn't know anything.
No laughing matter.
It took me months to recover, and I wrote my third happiness book called Facing Adversity, Stories of Courage and Inspiration. And it's true stories. I was collecting stories for 20 years, Antoniette. I've always been fascinated by people that overcome obstacles. And I started cutting out articles from magazines and newspapers in 1999. And when I was recovering, I didn't leave the house for months. But I don't like to waste time, and I wanted to turn a negative into a positive. So I wrote the book Facing Adversity. And I'll tell you one quick story.
Yeah.
A little 3-year-old boy was hiding. He was playing hide and seek, and he hid behind a tractor. And the tractor was running. And he put his hands in, and it cut off his hands. And his father, who was a surgeon, saw it happen. And he wasn't that kind of a surgeon. And he raced the little boy to the hospital. And it was a holiday, and there were no transplant surgeons. So the father had to do the surgery himself. He organized the team. He had never done that kind of surgery before. He reattached his son's hands, put them in casts. After a few months, they took off the casts, and the hands they were alive, but they weren't functional. The grandfather was a martial artist who trained that little boy every day to reuse his hands. And today, that little boy is a famous spinal surgeon, and he runs the spinal surgery clinic at a hospital in Colorado.
Wow.
That story gave me chills. I still can't believe that story. I checked it out. They're all real. It's a whole book of stories like that. Now, I've done surgery, and I know what a steady hand you have to have. To do spinal surgery, when you started out having your hands amputated, is a mind-boggling story. So this book is meant to give people inspiration and courage to go out and accomplish the things that they need to accomplish. And my funny book is called Man Robs Bank with His Chin and Other Unusual Stories Missed by Mainstream Media, because I like silly humor. I like the kind of humor that doesn't offend anybody. I don't do political humor, and I don't do offensive humor. I like silly humor, like Monty Python kind of stuff. So I wrote that book because I had my own column in this called The Weekly World News, which was the precursor to The Onion. And it was very strange and unusual stories. It was called Gurian's World of the Bizarre. So that book is available. And I always give out my email because I don't mind if people write to me with questions. So my email is jeffrey@jeffreygurian.com. JEFFREYGURIAN, Jeffrey@jeffreygurian.com. And I really appreciate you giving me this opportunity to speak about all these things.
Well, you're fabulous. And I think that every speaker will have an area where they need to follow you, right? You're all over the place. You're not difficult to find, whether it is finding their own voice or finding a way to connect with audiences through humor or correcting their mindset. There are, or just finding happiness in the day-to-day grind, whatever it might be. We all have at different mile markers within our journey, we face these different things. And I think that you're just kind of a one-stop shop for a lot of those things. So definitely check out Jeffre. Jeffre, as we're closing, you know that this is SpeakPact. Mm-hmm. And that I'm on a journey to make a pact with you and with our audience to make the greatest impact possible through the power of your voice. What is, if you were able to talk to the Jeffre of, let's say, 30 years ago, what's some actionable pieces of advice that you would give yourself that might have helped speed the process or helped you maybe avoid some of the bruises along the way?
Well, first I would say, speak through your heart. People can tell the difference whether you're just, it's important to walk the walk, not just talk the talk, and when you speak through your heart, and I think people will understand what that means. I had a healing center, and I called it healing on a heart level. The heart is the most powerful organ in the body. The brain puts out 140 millivolts of electricity, but the heart puts out 5,000 millivolts of electricity. It's the most powerful thing. It's why when you're upset and someone you care about or trust gives you a hug and you feel better, because you allowed them to transfer heart energy to you. So act through your heart. Kindness is very important. And confront your uncomfortability. Do everything that makes you uncomfortable, because the discomfort is not real. If other people can do it, you can do it as well. And when I speak to groups, I incorporate all these things into my talks. They're not only one thing, because they're all interconnected. It's hard for me. That's why when you ask me questions, sometimes I bring in something else, because everything that I do, there's many things, but they're all interconnected, and so that would be my advice to people, is to confront your uncomfortability and do everything that makes you uncomfortable. If you wake up in the morning and you get out of bed on the left side, get out on the right side. If you start brushing your teeth on this side, start on this side. Challenge yourself to do things that feel different.
Disrupt your own status quo, right?
Yeah, exactly.
And I love the heart piece, right? We're all so concerned with connecting with our audiences, grabbing at their hearts, right? And we forget to connect with ourselves and understand where we're at any given moment with our own hearts, because that's going to reflect the way that we communicate and connect.
It's so important. I can't emphasize it enough, but it has to come naturally. Mm-hmm. It's like you can't fake that, because people know. I talk about energy a lot. Energy is so real. Sometimes you'll meet somebody and you'll get like a weird vibe from them. They put a strange energy, and that's real. And sometimes you meet somebody and you feel like you've known them forever, and it feels very comfortable. And that's also very real. We're very sensitive to energy, but people don't often realize it. Not everybody lives in that world. I have no choice. That's who I've been since I'm a kid. And I had to learn that about myself, that I had to learn to use my sensitivity as a strength and not as a weakness. So I censor my life. For anybody who's listening who considers themselves very sensitive, make sure that you don't allow people in who take advantage of your sensitivity. People tend to take kindness for weakness, and it's not. It's actually a great strength. And I love to be able to bring that out. So thank you.
Well, thank you for being with us. This has been a fabulous time together. I feel like we've been through a whole journey together.
A whole
And
gamut of
you
things.
bring a lot to the table. So thank you for sharing your precious resource, your most precious resource of time, the number one resource that's unrenewable. And you gave that to us and the SpeakPact audience today. Thank you, Jeffre.
You're very welcome. It's an honor to be on with you. Thank you so much.
Your way, dear SpeakPact audience, is to thank Jeffre and to give us some flowers, is to give us that like, share this with somebody you know needs to hear these messages, and spread the love. So that's our one ask for you, is to perpetuate, right, the goodness that happened here today. So for now, we're going to say ciao, ciao.
Thank you for listening to the SpeakPact podcast. To become a recommended speaker of Antoniette's WPC speaker agency, or you are a host or planner looking for a dynamic expert in optimized performance, Antoniette would like to personally meet with you. Secure a time with her at speakerbooker.com. Again, that is speakerbooker.com. It all begins with a vision, a voice, and a pact to impact. Join the SpeakPact movement by joining our new private Facebook group at the link in our show notes. Find us on nearly every social media platform at One Antoniette. That's number 1, ANTONIETTE, or simply hashtag SpeakPact.